Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Oaks Countdown. Nicole, Russo in Kentucky and Dan Illman in New York. And all of the point scoring races for the April 30th Kentucky Oaks are now in the books. Let's take a look at the final point standings and sort of who's on the bubble. Remember, the Oaks is going to be limited to a field of 14 starters. Just because we have the final point standings after all the preps doesn't mean that this field couldn't still change. Certainly, we could see some fillies whose connections choose not to press on to the Oaks. And we're looking later this week. Late nominations for the Oaks are due April 10th. That could certainly change the picture, particularly because we have two fillies you'll see marked at the bottom of the leaderboard there. Soothsay, who we'll talk about in a moment, and Adventuring for Godolphin, who would have a spot in the field on points if they choose to become late nominees.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they are late nominees to this race. You've got the points. There's only one Kentucky Oaks a year. And while you have some strength at the top, horses like Search Results and Travel Column and Malathat and Clairiere, you could maybe poke holes in some of those horses. I think Soothsay and Adventuring belong in the field. I think they'll get in.
I tend to think both belong in the field as well. That said, after this final weekend of prep action with four major preps awarding 100 points to the winner, some fillies we were kind of waiting on stepped up, moved ahead. Let's go through them all really quickly here. As we said, four races to get through. One we were really waiting on, Malathat, finally made her long-awaited comeback in the Ashland. She had to work for it. I think she should move forward from a fitness standpoint off this race as we watch her wear down past the Champagne in the stretch.
We were waiting for her. She is still undefeated. She was very impressive in winning the Demoiselle last year. This was a long layoff and a big ask, but she has the big pedigree, the big purchase price, the big body. They would have been happy if she ran a fine second here to prep for the Kentucky Oaks. She showed a lot of will and determination, as she did in winning the Demoiselle. She will be one of the favorites in the Kentucky Oaks, and she demands respect.
Absolutely. And certainly you have to think the farther the better with her. One of several fillies expected to run in this year's Oaks by classic sire Curlin. Malathat is now the third consecutive member of her female line to win at least one Grade 1 race. She's out of Dreaming and Julia, who in turn is out of Dream Rush. Dream Rush was best around one turn, but in more recent generations, this family has really showed a propensity for distance.
No worries at all as it pertains to distance. Maybe worries for distance with the runner-up past the Champagne. And I don't want to knock this filly too much because that was a really good race in the Ashland. First time against winners out of a maiden victory, had the lead in the stretch, and it took a really good one to run her down. She has a lot of upside potential. I do wonder if the 1 1/8 is stretching it a bit for her.
Absolutely, and she's one of a couple of fillies on the leaderboard by Flatter, in addition to Search Results, who we'll talk about in a moment. Now, another filly we were kind of waiting to see step up was Pauline's Pearl. And she she ran well against Will's Secret last time out. I think she took advantage when that one elected to go to Keeneland rather than stay home at Oaklawn for the Fantasy Stakes. And Pauline's Pearl, will watch her here winning the Fantasy for her first stakes win. Another filly by a classic sire in Tappet, who already has an Oaks winner on his resume. She's out of a Grade 1 winning juvenile and Hot Dixie Chick, but Hot Dixie Chick, a half to Kentucky Derby winner, always dreaming.
You see that pedigree and you realize the sky could be the limit. And while she did not face a strong field in the Fantasy, this is the kind of confidence-boosting run that could have her primed for an upset chance in the Kentucky Oaks. She certainly is well connected, and she got a little bit of a speed figure in this race. She might be lurking under the radar somewhat. And again, with that pedigree, anything can happen. You kind of root for a horse like this.
I definitely think that under the radar is a good way to describe her. Certainly the horses who will get the attention coming into Oaks Week, assuming all goes well, Malathat, Clairiere, an unbeaten horse like Search Results, Travel Column, and Pauline's Pearl could fly under the radar a little bit with just a stellar pedigree for connections who know how to develop fillies.
Oh, no doubt about it. They know how to develop fillies. And again, while this filly might have taken the path of least resistance, I just feel like she's improving at the right time and reaching peak maturity coming into the Oaks.
Yeah. Let's talk about another filly who maybe hasn't been facing the cream of the crop, but who really hasn't done anything wrong. Search results stretched out a little bit more for the Gazelle win at Aqueduct, and we'll watch her here. This is the other daughter of Stallion Flatter.
Listen, she's got the ability to win at 1.125 miles. She's got a little bit of pedigree, and she's got tactical speed. And we know that tactical speed wins races on the dirt. She can adapt to any kind of pace scenario. She's fast out of the gate, but she's not a crazy need the lead type. I'm a little concerned about her lead changes in the stretch. We haven't seen it, and it really hasn't bothered her against the weaker New York competition. She has figures. She has Chad Brown in her corner. There's a lot to like, but the waters are going to get deeper come Kentucky Oaks Friday.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good point about her lead changes. It hasn't bothered her to date, but in a race like the Oaks, you're going to be looking for any edge you can get. I wonder if that's something we'll see them schooling her on in her training. That's certainly something we'll have to kind of pay attention to in the mornings leading up to the Oaks. The Stallion Flatter, I think he's given some speed to his offspring, but he's also the sire of the likes of Flat Out, who could, go both one turn and two.
He's always been a bit of an underrated stallion. I think when you discussed the Flatter progeny going into this year, you would say he's a racehorse stallion, but now he's starting to get top-class horses. Nice to see. Always been a big fan of Flatter standing at Claiborne Farm.
Absolutely. He is a racehorse sire. And in terms of, the AP Indy line and the sons of that stallion you talk about, he is underrated. He's a really strong stallion. Lastly, we'll come to our last 100-point Oaks prep. And the winner in just her second start, the lightly raced Soothsay, who I thought was really game down the lane while stretching out. Now, she will need to be a late Oaks nominee, late nominations due by April 10th, or you can supplement to the race for a hefty fee at entry time. I think if we see this filly on the late nominees list, if we see Richard Mandella press ahead with her to the Oaks, it really says something about what he thinks this filly is capable of.
Agree 100%, and you described it perfectly when you said her win in the Santa Anita Oaks was game. She made an early move in this race. You mentioned her lack of experience coming in. She took a strong challenge from the Bob Baffert trained Beautiful Gift turning into the lane. She refused to let that horse go by. So she has not only shown talent, she has shown a lot of grit and determination, and being so lightly raced, she has a lot of upside.
Absolutely. The Oaks is another huge spot to take a step ahead. The Santa Anita Oaks, she was stepping up to a graded stake off the maiden win, but it was, a shorter field in an area of the division that's kind of lacked a clear standout leader. It was a good place to step up. The next step is much bigger. But again, Richard Mandella, he knows how to develop these lightly raced, perhaps quirky fillies. And, I really think if he presses on with her, it says a lot about her potential upside.
You're absolutely right. Mandella is cautious. He is patient. He runs when he thinks he has a big chance to win. He is not going to ship. He had the Corky Beholder ship, and she was brilliant. Sometimes she caused problems shipping. He's going to ship if he thinks he has a chance to win. So keep an eye on that situation.
Well, today, the 6th of April, we're a little over 3 weeks out from the Kentucky Oaks. We'll know a bit more about the picture for the field later this week on the 10th of April, when, as we mentioned, those late nominations are due. We'll be back next week with the updated leaderboard after late nominees and to talk a little bit more about how the field continues to develop as we enter the final countdown on the Oaks Countdown.